What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here, reacting to the Eagles' win to go 4-0 after beating the Commanders in overtime on a walk-off Jake Elliott field goal. What a thrilling, emotional roller coaster, like all things in Philadelphia sports. It doesn't really feel like Philly until you're on the verge of a heart attack while you're watching a team and participating in an event that you claim to enjoy, and it's painstaking. That was the Eagles today. Emotional from start to finish. Let's start with the finish because we usually go through quarter by quarter, but I think it's important today to talk about the ending. We'll start with 2 minutes left in the game. A double move from Jalen Hurts to A.J. Brown for the touchdown in the corner on the deep shot with 1:43 left to go and one timeout remaining for the Commanders. Okay. It was cool for like 5 seconds. The play worked. Amazing execution. Great ball. Great catch. And then everything fell apart. You look at the clock and you're like, Jake Elliott, who we'll get into later, reliable kicker. You could have just wound this down and they would have had a few seconds left with no timeouts to have to go and match this field goal. Okay. And we're doing double moves here. Like, I know that it works, but here, this was the moment that we wanted to do it. And the unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on A.J. Brown, which this is just a small part of the end of the game. What the fuck were the refs doing today? That was a disaster. And it was on both sides. They were terrible. Just the ticky-tack, like illegal contact. There was a holding on Nicholas Morrow at one point, or Zach Cunningham, one of the two. Another ghost weird penalty on James Bradbury. There was one, an illegal contact on A.J. Brown. I'll take it, but was it really something? And I can't get over this unsportsmanlike thing. That play that happened with A.J. Brown in the corner where he lays the ball down, that happens like 8 times a game in an NBA game. People don't even blink twice when that happens. And also, I would like to submit, the rookie corner from the Commanders is very, very good. I think he'll be a great player, and I don't think the stats will back it up today, but I think he did a great job. If you have a grown man crying on the sideline after you score a touchdown against them, I don't think that should be a penalty. I think you should be allowed to taunt them. They're competitors. Let them compete. Let them talk to each other. Let them put the ball down at other people's feet. That gave them an extra 15 yards. So the Eagles' situational awareness this year, I think, has not been good. It's not necessarily the play calling. It's situational awareness that's been a real issue. And that would be the biggest example through a month into the season. You could have won that game without that play, and it would probably been a lot less painstaking. I can't really fault them for being aggressive. I feel like that's just who they are. But I think this is into a larger problem of like not understanding time and place. You know, I'm not going to fault them for going for it, for taking deep shots, for trying to hit home runs. But it just feels like they don't realize the moment. And that's a perfect example of like, you're not trying to hit a home run there. You're trying to get on base. That was it. It's like an extra inning games in baseball. There's a runner on second. You don't have to hit a home run. Get him to third with less than 2 outs. That's it. That's what the Phillies were trying to do in that situation, or the Eagles. I'm so crossed up. We got so much sports going on in the city right now. But that's just how I feel. That situational awareness hasn't been good. And that's where you led to that situation at the end of the game. All right. Now just get off the field. If you're the defense, get off the field. They had one timeout left, a minute 43. You get a sack and it's 7-17. Get off the fucking field. And that's how I felt the entire day. We're going to get into the game as a whole, but it just felt like Groundhog's Day of the game last year at home against the Commanders, where the defense could not make a play to get themselves off the field. On 2nd and 17, Sam Howell takes off. The meaning, again, like, yeah, he hit him well. His foot's out of bounds, but it's also like a third down in a one-possession game. Late in the game, like it's just, it was tough. And they made multiple conversions there. At the end, this is what bothered me. There was 10 seconds left. They're at the 10-yard line. There's 7 seconds left. They're at the 10-yard line. You bring pressure. They have to get the ball out quickly, incomplete. They unfortunately had to get it out so quickly that it left time for one more play. And then you go into soft coverage. That bothered me because it gave them the opportunity. You knew exactly what they're going to do in that situation. Look, corner, back shoulder throw. It's pretty much the only play that you have when you're out down to 2 seconds and you're at the 10-yard line. It's exactly what everybody's always done in football. Didn't love it. Didn't love it, and the defense just couldn't get off the field, which makes it ironic that as we get into overtime, they get a 3-and-out. They get the stop that they needed. Finally, it was just the second 3-and-out of the day as you're going into overtime. They just could not get off the field, but they did it when it mattered most. And then the offense takes over. They start to move down the field. They get the necessary yards, the intentional grounding. Again, there's nothing intentional about a quarterback and a receiver not being on the same page. Jalen throws it deep. AJ Brown cuts the route short. That's not intentional. That's two guys not being on the same page. But they did a great job getting you with Devontae, getting yourself back into field goal range, and having Jake Elliott deliver as he always does. It's just amazing how consistent this guy has been. We need to take 10 seconds at least and talk about him and talk about how consistent he's been in his Eagles career so far, with such big moments, rising to the occasion, being consistent. We're looking at a punting situation where they really haven't found a guy who consistently can help you on the special teams. And there you have Jake Elliott, who's been so consistent. Again, hit every field goal today. He had a 61-yarder early in the season. His career started with the Eagles back in the Super Bowl season, hitting a 61-yard field goal. He hits it from 50 plus here today for them to win, and just has been so good so far this year. He was 3 for 3 last week, 3 for 3 this week. He's just been so consistent in big moments as well. He is awesome. What a godsend for this team. Delivers again, getting the shine that he deserves as he seals it home for them to get the 34-31 victory. So that was the end of the game, and that took 6 minutes to talk about. This was a chaotic roller coaster. But I think, like I mentioned, this felt like Groundhog Day right from the start. The Eagles had one possession in the first quarter. This is the only way that you can really stop this offense, and that's really what we talked about last year in this game. And it's just those long, sustained drives. The best way to stop Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, have them sit on the bench. It's every best team. That's the best. The Chiefs, you know how you defend Mahomes? Not have him on the field. That's the best way to do it. You can talk about defensive coverages all you want. He's going to figure out a way to stop it. He's going to figure out a way to beat it. Have him on the bench. And that's what they were able to do to the Eagles early on, especially in the first half. They just couldn't get off the field. Sam Howell did such a good job on third down. They did such a good job of having him in manageable third down situations. They had 3 sacks on the day. This was a team that gave up 9 sacks a week ago. And it just looked like a total 180 of situational awareness for them, getting themselves in position where they weren't behind the sticks. We talked about this last week. That's what we wanted to see. Last week, the Eagles did such a good job, held Rachaad White under 40 yards rushing, and really didn't allow the Buccaneers to ever be ahead of the sticks. They were constantly behind, constantly in second 11, second and 12. That didn't really happen today. So you set up a lot of third and manageables that the Commanders converted. That's exactly how it felt last year. You couldn't get off the field. And then when big plays came your way, you're looking at that second drive there on the second touchdown on the Brian Robinson score. One play, Brandon Graham finally gets pressure, knocks the ball straight up into the air, and it's a drop pick. Next play, come back, fumble into the end zone. They recover. It's just like the defense couldn't make a play to get themselves off the field, and then when they did make a play, the ball didn't bounce their way. It felt exactly like the game last year. I was like a Dallas Goedert face mask away from feeling like Bill Murray, living in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. That's how I felt watching this game in the first half. It was the same game as last year. Long, sustained drives, third down conversions, the inability for the defense to make the big play. And even if the offense is doing well, you didn't even see them. So, I do think this is good because this has been like the Eagles all year, this year through a month and really last year. So at the end of the half, they go down, they get 3 points. Devontae Smith, huge catch. There is no better player. I don't think Devontae Smith is the best wide receiver in the league. He is the best wide receiver in the league at high pointing the ball and making catches. He makes another huge one, puts you in field goal range. So you're going down to the half 17-10. Then you come out of the half. You get a field goal. You get the run game going. Now you're up 17-13. You get a stop. You get the ball back. It's an A.J. Brown 60-plus yard touchdown. Big play. Great blocking down the field by Olamide Zaccheaus. He's really taken over as wide receiver 3. All right, we love to see it. So that is like they go into the half, refocus, and do a great job of coming out on both sides, getting stops when you need it, putting it together. And it just felt like they were scattered at points in the first half, and they were scattered because the defense couldn't get off the field, couldn't get the offense in rhythm, and felt like we weren't even seeing Jalen Hurts. And then once we finally got going, it's like, all right, score before half, score after half, touchdown. They came back with another field goal. They're up 24-17 at that point. You're feeling good. So that ability for them to kind of just take over, mix themselves, run and pass. It was another half where DeAndre Swift had 6 carries at halftime. You're like, all right, why is that the case? In this situation, I will say it was the inverse of what we saw a few weeks ago, where they were selling out to stop the run. They were selling out to stop Hurts' feet. This today, there was a lot of double moves, a lot of deep shots because that's what they were getting from the Commanders. It felt like before other teams didn't want to give up the home run and stuff like that. And then they were selling out. And it's like, all right, the Vikings, there were like 3-man fronts against one of the best running offensive lines in the league. I'm like, all right, well, let's just take the 7 yards. Like, okay, it's 2nd and 3 now. Was that worth it? This was the total opposite. Whereas, like, all right, they have a great defensive line. They're stout. They're kind of hovering around that line of scrimmage and making it so they could stop that run. So I think that's why you saw less of DeAndre Swift today. Just 14 carries. He only had 6 in the first half. But they did a good job, again, coming out of the half, putting points on the board, and mixing run and pass. We want to see that balance because they are so good at it. And it's just like you can be aggressive, and the aggressive doesn't always mean throwing the ball 60 times. They do a good job of pushing forward aggressiveness by the balance. So I think they did a great job with that. Again, this is probably the reason that they are 4-0 because they know how to refocus at halftime and come out, get stops when they need to, get points when they need to. So that was awesome. AJ Brown, we'll touch on him really quick while we're doing the offense. Since the argument on the sideline, if you want to call it an argument, here is AJ Brown's stat line in the 2 games since: 18 receptions, 306 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You want to see intensity from your top talents during competition because that intensity breeds positive results. It's been across sports from the beginning of time. Intensity in competition breeds positive results, especially when it's your most talented guys. That's why if you're a dweeb who was worried about that argument on the sideline, you should not have ever been talking about it. You don't know what you're talking about. This is what happens. This is what happens. This is what happens. Aggressiveness. He was like, hey, I'm seeing something. This is what we should do. That's what you want to see between your top guys, AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. That's what they should be talking about. They should be intense when they're talking about these conversations. And that's what you've seen since. It's opened up the playbook. He has 18 receptions, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's looked unstoppable. 2 big plays today. It's opened up the deep shots, which everyone was disappointed about because they weren't hitting it before. Now everyone's selling out on the run, and look what happens. Now AJ Brown's taking the top off of the defense, and just excellent devil move plays. I thought there were great play calls by Brian Johnson in there. Again, situational awareness, not quite there, but he's calling the big shots now, and it just feels like they've got a better balance. This is the most put together offensive performance of the season. A lot of that is because of AJ Brown's ability to make plays down the field, balance us out with the run game. They had 34 points today. They looked great. And again, there's points where they don't look great. And I think that's just because we're spoiled. Like they ran through last season and didn't barely ever played in any competitive games. But if this was last season and if this were any other season and they were 4-0, we'd be like, all right, they're 4-0, big wins. You know, this was awesome. Big home win against your division rival. This is awesome. You scored 34. If you just look at this game in a silo, and it wasn't just any Eagles game in any season, they scored 34 points against Washington at home, overtime victory, you'd be elated. Because it's a team that went to the Super Bowl a year ago and put up 35 in the Super Bowl, we're almost like, it's not quite there yet. Like, it's not good enough. And it's like, and a lot of teams in the league right now would be really elated with a 34-point performance in an overtime win. And it's just, that's what kind of happens. It's similar to Georgia. I heard this on like a podcast. It's like, we're not going to talk about Georgia until November. And they won this week and they like won by a touchdown. It's like, it wasn't their best performance, but at the end of the day, they're 5-0 and they're going to be competing for a college football playoff. It feels the same with the Eagles. Like they're one of the only 2 4-0 teams this year. And it doesn't feel like we're going to talk about them. There's other headlines around the league and just like, they'll just keep winning and they'll just keep doing this. And they did it again. Like they had another like big drive. They got the ball back with 6 minutes left. They got down the field and they scored a touchdown. And whether the touchdown was a good thing or not still remains to be seen. They're lucky to have won the game and they didn't necessarily need it, but they got a big time score late in the game. They just always seem to. Last week, 9-minute drive to end the game. They execute when it matters most, and they're consistent when it matters most, and that's why they're 4-0. And, I think there are points where it's not pretty, and I think there's times where they outthink themselves trying to be the smartest man in the room, where it's like, just take what the defense gives you. You don't have to hit the home run. Set up 2nd and 4. They get back to that, it seems like, in a second half of all of these games and forget about it in the first half. It's like, we want to get these style points early. And it's like, no, like just take it and you're going to win at the end of the day. That's how it feels. And they're 4-0. And if you look around the league, there are other teams that are really, really good and teams that I really, really like, but the Eagles continue to be the most consistent. I really like this Ravens team. They're 3-1. They won 28-3 against the Browns, just totally dominated them from start to finish. They lost last week at home to the Colts without Anthony Richardson, to Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew, who was on this team a year ago. The Dolphins put up 70 last week. They did not have the firepower to keep up with the Bills this week. The Bills have won 3 straight games after looking like an absolute disaster in week 1. This is what happens. The Eagles are most consistent in a league where there is tremendous parity and it is really tough to win week to week, no matter who you are playing. There are upsets every single week. There are teams that look great in one week and look like a disaster the next. The Cowboys, on the other 50% of this podcast, won 38-3 today. They lost to the Cardinals last week. It's just the state of the league that we're in. Anybody can win on any given Sunday, and the Eagles continue to win as yet another 10-game winning streak in Jalen Hurts' career. They are 4-0 to start the season, and at the end of the day, is that all that really matters? It is. And just wrapping up the game here, just some thoughts, just minor notes that I wrote down. The decision to not go for 2, weird. As soon as I got to the 10-yard line, I was assuming they'd go for 2. The comments on Ron Rivera as to why they didn't go for 2, even weirder. He said they didn't go for 2 because his offense was gassed, ran a lot of plays, getting down the field to score on that opportunity. What the fuck do you think the defense felt in that situation? Do you think they were like, oh, yeah, I can run a marathon right now? Go for 2. You're on the road against a team that's 3-0. Go for 2. The QB sneak play, which has been a talk. I saw it multiple times in college football yesterday. I saw it multiple times in NFL today across the league. It continues to be prominent with the Eagles. They ran it multiple times. Calling offsides on Landon Dickerson. Is this our way of trying to thwart this play because it's considered an unfair advantage? So they haven't banned the play, but they're going to try to ban the Eagles doing it. So they're going to call us for offsides. Here's the thing. It doesn't make sense because the defensive lineman was literally touching the football on that play. If you want to call offsides on us, you're going to have to call offsides on about 11 people on the line. It's just like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And just one last thing. They go on to the West Coast next week. The Rams survived today, but it's going to be interesting because there were different things in coverage where it's like, oh, are they playing soft right now? Oh, should they have brought pressure? It seems like Sean Desai, the first 3 weeks, did a really good job of, having this kind of the pulse of when to bring pressure and stuff like that. And they did so today. A lot of that was knowing when to bring Nicholas Morrow, who's been awesome at linebacker. Double-digit tackles, double-digit sacks today. Are you kidding me? He's been unbelievable. So it'll be interesting next week when they play the Rams and it's Cooper Kupp coming back with Puka Nacua. That'll be a really interesting challenge because those guys are just going to be constantly open. So it'll be, when do you bring pressure? Stuff like that. And just how do you utilize those linebackers in coverage, bring them on the blitz and everything in between. So that'll be a really interesting matchup. Josh Jobe has been constantly targeted. Now he's going to be guarding the Kua or Kupp, depending on who it is. So that'll be really, really interesting. But yeah, those are everything that I saw today. Again, like it was a roller coaster ride. They should have won the game in regulation. But they scored 34 points and they won in overtime. So I'm not going to sit here and do too much complaining. I'll complain about the refs. I'll do that. But there are certain things that I would like the Eagles to do differently. But there isn't an NFL team right now, aside from maybe the 49ers, who wishes that they weren't the Eagles. And they're 4-0 and they're on. Whew. Well, that was positive. That, I love today's days like today. Phillies win game 90. Playoffs start this week. Eagles win. They're 4-0. What are we doing? Let's be happy. Positive vibes. Can't wait. Big week in Philadelphia. We'll be back with our show. This is the biggest week of the season for the Cowboys. The Eagles looking to remain undefeated, go 5-0 against a pretty good Rams team. We got Phillies playoffs in between. Huge week. We'll be back. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you then.